This is Energy Cast, and I'm Jay Dowenhauer. I want to thank you for giving me your time, and I hope that you learned something new, whether you're an industry veteran or simply want to learn more about energy. And if you want to skip all this preamble and get to the interview, that starts at the 4-minute mark. I'll tell you my story with each episode, but the reason I wanted to start this podcast is that simply, I think I can do the best podcast on energy. But Jay, you'd say, people get paid to make energy podcasts. Yes, but they always focus on the environment and global warming. And many come at these technologies with a bit of hostility. For instance, coal bad, wind good, nuclear sort of good. I want to focus on energy technology itself, and I want to focus on the business and economic models behind different technologies and industry. And ultimately, I want to have an open conversation about where these technologies fit in the overall mix. Like many of you, I subscribe to the everything, everywhere, all the time outlook on energy. I won't apologize for that, and neither should you. So it might sound funny that on my first podcast, when I'm trying to break from the hipster herd, I'm going to be talking about renewables and not lignite scrubber technology on coal plants. Believe me, we'll get to that. So a little bit about me. My wife Ashley and I live in Charlotte, and if you're part of the energy industry, you really can't pick a better region to be than here. I could honestly do years worth of episodes 10 miles from my home, but I promise it won't be a regional program, and you'll see that in good time. I began my career as a TV news producer, and this relates to the topic we're going to discuss today because meteorology is a big component. Now, as a producer, I never found weather that interesting. I really used it as an accordion to stretch out newscasts if I was behind. And I hated writing weather stories. Plenty of rain in the forecast, it'll be wet. And why do TV newscasts report what neighborhoods are out of power? Think about it. You either have power and you're not affected, or you're one of the affected and you can't watch TV. My sister loved weather, and that's probably because she's a meteorologist and gets to be where the action is. She married another meteorologist, and that's why you'll hear me name check the two places where they worked in the interview later in the program. Meteorologists are not just TV weathermen. The utility industry has been using them for years to help forecast energy demand. So basically, if it's going to be 90 degrees tomorrow, you can bet that all the air conditioners will be on and the demand will be X many megawatts. Now, what I find compelling about this subject we're covering today is that it gives meteorologists a tool for forecasting energy supply. So if it's windy, you can count on your wind assets. And if it's cloudy, you can expect a reduction in your solar assets across the country. One of the things I'm always drawn to when it comes to energy technology is a technology's ability to take the biggest detractor away from a conventional energy technology. For instance, we've got carbon capture for removing CO2 from coal, or water recycling, reducing the need for more water during hydraulic fracturing. That gets us to the topic of this episode: what to do about the reliability issue when it comes to renewables. Okay, enough of that. For those of you who don't know, Duke Energy is headquartered here in Charlotte. And when I first started thinking about this program, I very naively asked if I could talk to them about their Renewable Energy Center. And you have to hand it to them, they said yes. Now, I could have gone up there and acted like a complete maniac. And the fact that they gave me the time of day makes them extremely cool in my book. So hats off to Duke. The first thing that's fun to mention is where they're located.
Daytona 500. Here they come off turn 4 for the final time. Kurt Busch for Gene Haas and Tony Stewart.
No, it's not Talladega, although that's pretty close. They share an office space in NASCAR's headquarters in downtown Charlotte. And if you're in town, you got to check out the Hall of Fame that's there in that building. Now, picture one of those control rooms like the kind you've seen with NASA or a big TV studio, only better lit. Monitors track action across the country. And that's right, the Renewable Control Center oversees assets outside of Duke's territory, as well as those that the utility currently owns. That's where I caught up with Brandon Edmondson, Duke's Renewable Control Center manager. I mic'd us both up, and prior to the sit-down interview, I thought it might be good to do a little walk and talk to show me what we were seeing on the screens. Oh, and by the way, we were both wired up to the same recording device, so we had to walk around like Siamese twins and had to be careful not to clothesline somebody walking between us. Here we go. Let's take let's see how we can do this.
Stay close.
Okay, we're here with Brandon. We're going through the center. How long has the center been around?
So the Renewable Control Center's been around since 2009. It's always been in Charlotte, North Carolina. We started out with one operator per shift. It was a 5-person rotation, and now we're at about 6 operators per shift on a 4-team rotation. We provide weather data and also severe lightning, weather and lightning data to customers that are looking for those type of services for their technician safety.
Okay. So what you've got here is you've got several rings around the country, and you've got yellow rings in outside of red rings. What are those?
The yellow rings and the red rings are alerts and warning locations for the wind and the solar farms. So on the solar farms, we have a 10-mile and a 30-mile ring. And if a lightning strike or a severe weather storm comes within those rings, a text alert is sent to the technician. For wind, it's a 60 and a 30-mile. So at 60 miles, they get an alert. At 30 miles, they get a warning to come down tower, find a safe place for 30 minutes before returning to work. Currently, looking at the screen, there's some lightning in Pennsylvania today. Those technicians are currently not working at those sites until that storm passes.
The most important thing, other than just ensuring that we have reliability and we're expecting what we're expecting out of the assets, is also, the safety component.
Right.
I think that's something.
So you have a technician 300 foot in the air. If there's lightning or a severe storm coming through, whether it's a tornado, a hurricane, a hailstorm, whatever it is, we want to make sure they're out of the turbine in a safe, grounded building. Same for our solar facilities. They're in the wide open there. If there's a storm in the area, we want to make sure they find an O&M building or get in a vehicle or something till the storm passes.
How long does it usually take for a technician, say he's on top of a wind turbine, how long does it take him to get down off of a typical tower?
Depending on what they're doing and what they have to secure as far as tooling, to get both technicians down and get in a safe place, you're probably talking a minimum of 30 minutes.
Right, and he's going down a ladder essentially, right?
Yes.
A ladder inside the tower.
Yeah, all of the Duke Energy turbines have cyst, that takes some weight off of you as you go down the tower, but they still have to climb that tower down.
And so here we see, right below that, we got the cameras and everything, just kind of monitoring here. Is there anything particular you're looking for? Are you just making sure that there's not people there who shouldn't be there, or is there anything extra that you'd be looking at in, say, these pictures of these solar farms that we're seeing?
We do remote camera monitoring at all of our solar plants. The facilities are unmanned on a daily basis. Some of our larger plants, we have an 80 megawatt NERC plant that has technicians there nearly every day. Some of our smaller plants do not have boots on the ground on a daily basis. We have these cameras to get a little bit more insight. Severe weather at the site, we found brush fires alongside the site, wild animals on site, children getting under fences, those kind of things. So it gives us a look into the site of what's going on at a facility where there may not be somebody there for a few days at a time. And then we also do it for technician safety. A lot of these solar plants have lone workers, they're working alone for a full day, and it gives us a little bit more visibility into what that technician's doing versus wind, where everybody works in teams of 2.
And I can understand that. I used to work I was in the oil field, we would have a lot of guys go out there one-man banding, by themselves on the lease roads and stuff. And you get bit by a rattlesnake.
Right.
You're on your own. And so this is really good to see that you can see what's going on there. But a lot more safety component than I was expecting here.
And our control center is managed 24/7, 365 on the wind side, and then on solar we have 18 hours of coverage per day. So that's sun up in the Carolinas to sundown in California, where we have assets as well.
And then here we are back in Texas. I take it this is the ERCOT.
Yes, sir. That's the ERCOT market.
Okay.
So we monitor the pricing there. That's the only market where we're in the merchant market. So we like to keep an eye on that pricing and help us better understand when curtailments come through and those type of things. Maybe the reason why we're seeing those type of notices.
Okay. Looks like it's very hot around DFW, probably down to Waco right now.
Yes, sir.
What was that telling you?
Well, actually, here in the blue, there's really low pricing right now, and some of it's even getting real close to going negative pricing. When you look at the bright red, that's where the demand is higher, and there's not a lot of generation, so they're raising the prices to get more generators out there producing.
And I see we have both the Weather Channel on and CNN, and I just wanted to point this out that my sister's at CNN and my brother-in-law is at Weather Channel, so if they're listening to this, they know that Duke is fans.
We're watching them, yeah. So definitely it helps us keep up with any severe weather across the country. It was I guess a year or so ago, the San Bernardino attack. We actually saw that. We caught it on the CNN news, and we had some sites nearby, so we were able to notify those technicians, get them to a secure area until the suspects were caught in that situation. So that kind of helps us when we have sites nearby.
Now this looks, what we got over here? We're kind of on the last two rows of screens here. What is this telling us?
On the top two screens, that's our energy management system that looks into our substations. So all of our NERC sites are in these views, so we can see what the megawatt outputs of the site are, what the max cap set points of the site that the transmission operator's allowing us to produce, the line voltages, the breaker statuses. You can see up there that everything is in red, so red's good in the energy world. Green
Right.
means it's open. So right now all those breakers are closed in and we're producing.
You talk about curtailment. Kind of take us through what you mean by that.
So curtailment's always based on if there's not enough demand out there for what you're producing. If there's too much production and there's congestion on the transmission system, those are the two main reasons you would be curtailed. You might not have enough production out there because the site went down, unexpectedly, and they're asking for other generators to pick up that generation. Or you have a situation where there's especially in Texas, there's a lot of wind assets, and on a really strong, good wind day, they almost have too much generation. So they'll curtail some of the generators back to manage that load. If there's too much load, they have to cut back so that they don't overextend the lines and stuff like that.
When I was working in Texas for the coal group, there were some coal plants that were out in West Texas that had to compete with the lines for the renewable assets, and so there was a little bit of friction there. So is this where that decision happens? You could curtail back the renewable in favor for your base load. I mean, where is that decision happening?
So the system operator in the ERCOT market is sending those curtailment directives to Duke Energy Renewables. So we're getting those directives. They're all automated into our energy management system. So they send a curtailment flag, either based. It's normally they'll send a negative price, and once they send negative pricing, you don't want to produce in a negative market because you're paying them to take the energy. They'll normally push out negative pricing, and the generators will start to come offline.
Understand.
Whoever was flagged to curtail will come offline for that reason.
It's my understanding that you guys also have, in addition to your wind and your solar assets, you also have some battery assets, right, to kind of help balance some things out. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So we have a large 36 megawatt battery plant in No Trees, Texas, that's tied to one of our wind facilities. They share a substation. It's a 36 megawatt plant. It's regulation up, regulation down. We provide frequency control to try to smooth out some of that transmission and the changes in frequency. So that's really what that's used for. And ERCOT loves it from what we've heard. There's not any other battery plants that I'm aware of that size in Texas, so that helps them a lot out there on the western side, where there's a lot of wind generators that cause those frequency issues on the transmission.
The battery's basically the accordion in the whole situation. situation, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. We did a retrofit of lithium ion just due to the cycling of the lead acid. They did not hold up. So we've changed the technology, and we're getting a lot better response out of the batteries, and the constant discharge and charge of those is not depleting the life cycle like it was the lead acid.
You're doing wind and solar mainly. Will there ever be a time when other renewables such as wave energy might be added to the center?
I think it could come our way down the road. I think traditionally Duke Energy Renewables has gone after proven technologies. That battery project was a good example of us diving into something new. We have other parts of the business that are looking at microgrids and some of those type of things. So who knows, maybe in the control center in the future we'll be monitoring microgrids as well.
Meteorology, let's talk about that, plays a huge part in all of this. My family has a few on-air personalities, in fact, but there are meteorologists who are not in front of the camera playing a huge role in the energy sector. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I think people really don't understand that meteorology plays a huge role in utilities.
Yes, I agree. It's probably one of the biggest pieces of our daily nominations, declarations we put out into the markets. We have to have a dependable forecast, whether it's based on wind speed or solar irradiance. And then, from the sites, we have to have an accurate estimate of what's going to be available. So the weather forecast and the availability of the site is what we use to come up with that calculation of what we're going to produce and what we send to the off-taker or to the transmission provider.
That gets me to my next point, which I find very compelling, is that for years meteorology was used to determine what we believe the demand might be. If it's going to be 90 degrees outside, we can assume there's going to be a lot of air conditioners on, right? But now with renewables, it's really meteorologists are predicting what the supply is going to be, right? And that's a different dynamic and
right.
Something that's extremely critical for reliability when you say of renewables.
Yeah, exactly. And the importance of knowing the forecast for us is to make sure that if we have a good forecast coming our way in the day ahead or whatever, that we have those units available, because that's our fuel. Renewables is a free fuel, but you want to capture that fuel while it's there, because if your units aren't available to absorb that fuel, then you lose it. Lost generation, lost revenue. So it's very important that you pay attention to those forecasts. You schedule your outages accordingly when you have low winds or low solar radiance, or you do your solar maintenance at night, or whatever you got to do to try to reduce the amount of generation loss.
There was clearly a need to bring a facility like this online. What was the real driver to do so?
So for the NERC entities, they have to be monitored 24/7. It's a requirement. So I think that was the initial driver. The requirements to have eyes on the sites at all times and be able to control them if there was an issue, an emergency, and the transmission operator or grid operator, needs you to take the site offline, change a voltage, change the output. Somebody has to be there to control that remotely, and that's why we're here. That's what got it all started, and now that's moved into a lot of third-party services for other owners, other renewable energy owners who need those same things, but may not have a control center.
You have a boss like we all do. Clearly there were metrics that need to show improved performance on the renewable assets. What are some key performance indicators that the center is helping renewables get more out of those assets?
Yeah, so we're here in the control center, we're held to the availability of units, are they online and available? And then also owner energy yield, which is when the resource is there, were we available? So there's two different metrics. Availability is just, are you there all the time? And then the owner energy yield is, were you there when the resource was there and able to produce? And then with forecasting, making sure that we forecasted what the plan a day from the site said to forecast based on the weather.
I'd assume you've seen improvement since you began in 2009 to now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we treat this just like you would treat any other large utility scale generation. Each generator or us is just like a combined cycle or a coal plant, whatever you want to call it. We treat it the same way.
In the early days of renewables, it seemed that there was maybe this theoretical threshold percentage of renewable assets that could be on the grid at any time. Otherwise, maybe reliability might suffer. Is that still the case? Is there still like a threshold of, say, 30% that we can only have 30% of renewables on the grid? Or is that kind of way of thinking?
I've seen a big change since I've been with Duke Renewables. I've been with them 8 years, and in the beginning, a lot of these larger NERC sites that really had a big effect on the systems were heavily curtailed. The transmission was not there to manage the amount of assets in certain areas. You saw daily curtailments, sometimes weeks on end. They would be curtailed to a certain reduced amount or all the way to the zero output. So, you see a lot less of that now. I think there's been a lot of transmission improvements in the areas that have had a lot of renewable construction, so that's helped. And I think a lot of people have, transmission operators are learning how to manage that type of generation on the system better.
By having one location that can see a lot of assets around the country, as opposed to, say, just the asset in Duke's territories, it would seem that there's been a great opportunity for data mining here. Have you discovered any trends that maybe you haven't noticed before? Maybe in the behavior of solar assets or the behavior of wind assets? Has that given generators a little bit of a leg up on maybe where to site potentially new solar assets or wind assets because they performed or outperformed or underperformed better than expected?
I think as our group's grown, you can see our focus has shifted to different areas of the country, and we have a lot of assets in southern Texas. It's good resource, wind resource there, and there's been a lot of focus on development there. In solar, it's been heavily driven by the tax incentives and some of those type of things. I feel, and we have a lot of concentration in North Carolina and California with the recent incentives we had there. So, I think it's, resource driven and incentive driven.
I think what I'm trying to get at is, you've built this center and it's a great resource for the people out in the field, but at the same time, you're gleaning a lot of information. Regional facilities might be able to get a little bit of a low-level snapshot of what's going on in the area, but you're able to see what's going on in the whole country,
Right.
and all nationwide. And I would have to think that would be a huge asset for just really us understanding the renewable potential in this country.
Yeah. With my background being in solar operations, we had our engineering technologist in the center was a wind and a battery plant manager. We have a lot of people that brought field experience into the control center, bring a lot of insight of the day-to-day issues that are seen in the field so we can better understand what's going on in the field and how to help them better. And kind of looking at the weather patterns over the years and understanding, when the resources are not as strong, it really helps us with our outage scheduling. When you're going to have those lost revenue times a year for scheduled outages and planned substation outages, stuff like that, it's helped us to better manage that and reduce our revenue losses.
Yeah, that's what I think is also pretty interesting, and I've seen this happen before, that a lot of times you learn the most from just going bottom up. The guys are actually in there, able to provide their insights when you're looking at something from a 10,000-foot level.
We've had really strong operators come from field technician roles, wind and solar technicians, people that have been in different type of dispatch jobs, whether it's a service type dispatch, a generation dispatch, or a distribution dispatcher. We've had people from 911 dispatching, so have different backgrounds, used to the schedules, maybe have some technical expertise in a mechanical field or renewables, and being able to bring that in and be successful.
What are your plans for the future? More assets?
I think our focus specifically this year is the growth of third-party business. We're looking to continue growth there and provide services for more asset owners.
So you believe that you're able to leverage up your scale for a lot of these more independent producers to help them maximize their assets, basically just stronger together, right?
Right. I think the advantage Duke has over a lot of companies is we have the back backing of Duke Energy and all of the cybersecurity and all the other shared services with when it comes to NERC, requirements and having all that internal knowledge. I mean, the same groups that support nuclear and coal and hydro and all the others help support renewables. So I think we have a leg up with simply just with the security and how Duke treats its renewable assets very similar to a traditional regulated asset.
You talked about you're measuring your performance. What are things that you're working to improve? Predicting outages, power supply from forecasting?
Yeah, I think our focus right now is with outage scheduling. This year we're really trying to focus on increasing our revenues any way we can. So managing when you schedule the outages is very important, and also making sure that all the communications for these outages is tracked and approved properly.
Because you're able to supply this service and this monitoring and everything, it seems like that helps with the barriers to entry for investors who are wanting to bring new renewable assets online.
A lot of our competition you go to are going to have the same type of technology repeated multiple times over. Every site's going to have a similar type of turbine technology. We've broadened our scope and we go after anything and everything that makes sense for our business.
Well, there you have it, the Duke Renewable Control Center. We've been speaking to Brandon Edmondson, the manager there. And a few extra facts about the center that are currently monitoring 4.7 gigawatts of renewable assets and plan to get up to 5 this year. About 2/3 of those assets belong to Duke and the rest are third party. Brandon says he believes the center can ultimately oversee 10 gigawatts. Also, a little postscript concerning my sis and her husband. Looks like they're going to have a little weather baby later this year. No word yet on if the nursery for the little guy will be chroma key blue. Congratulations to them. Can't wait to meet the little Neffers. Special thanks to Tammy McGee and the Duke Communication Department who helped make this happen. And I also want to thank those who helped make this happen closer to home. I want to thank my wife, Ashley, above all, for having the patience with me to put this together on weekends. I also want to thank Sean Stroop, who composed the music for this podcast. I met Sean when he played at my wedding a few years ago. So if you like what you hear, you can find him at Stroop. That's STROOPE Loops. You can reach me at host@energy-cast.com. And of course, there's energy-cast.com, where I have some pictures and extra info on the topic discussed today. Thank you again for listening, and join us next week when we witness nothing big, just history being made in hydrogen fuel cell technology. I'm Jay Dowenhauer. We'll see you next time.